All right. So today for Black Social Capital class, we will be interviewing and having a conversation with Mr. Ricardo Horne. With Mr. Ricardo Horne is the current Assistant Director of Community Engagement at Oxford College of Emory University. At Oxford, he oversees community service initiatives for a campus of 900 students. Prior to joining the Emory staff, Ricardo worked at LSU, which is Louisiana State University, in the Office of Residence Life. He is currently pursuing his Juris Master's degree at the Emory School of Law. Previously, he attained his Master of Education at Valdosta State, go Blazers,
Go Blazers,
in a Bachelor's of Business. Don't shade us. You know what I'm saying? I know you didn't maximize. All right.
I said go Blazers.
Go Blazers. And a Bachelor's of Business from Mississippi State. Mm-hmm. Outside of work and school, Ricardo enjoys running, attending city council meetings, and practicing the ukulele.
Yes. That was a wonderful introduction, especially the emphasis you put on the Emory University School of Law. It just made me feel fancy.
Listen, if you're going to go for it.
Very true. I'm happy to be here, Lauren. Thank you, Professor Bass. Thank you so much for providing the space and allowing me the opportunity to speak to members of your class.
So one thing that you guys may have noticed in my intro, Ricardo and I met while we were in graduate school at VSU. So based on my bio that I provided to the class, I am a two-time alumnus from VSU. I did undergrad and grad there, and Ricardo and I met while we were in our graduate program. It was a very unique encounter. We did not meet, well, we met the first semester. We began the program at the same time, but we began to build a relationship within our second year of grad school. So it just kind of developed over time. And here we are 7, almost 8 years later, still going.
Yeah.
All right. So our first question, Mr. Horne, what made you want to be involved in community service?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I wanted to be involved in community service because I benefited so much from community service in my life. I come from a background that I think a lot of students can relate to, first generation, low income. I'm the oldest of 9 kids, and I was raised in a single family home in the projects. So you can imagine that there were many times where we relied on community servants to help us get by, whether that was donating food to, a soup kitchen, or toys for Christmas, or after school tutoring. I just have had many opportunities to benefit from the selflessness of other people. And I knew early on that I wanted to do that I wanted to be somebody who, once I made it, whatever making it would look like, I wanted to help the next Ricardo find his way. So that is what got me started. I took a few detours. You'll notice in my bio that I wanted to go in the business route, and we can get into that more later. I did not go the business route because I think that when something is your calling, you will find your way back. And eventually I got back into doing community service, which is what I'm truly passionate about.
Awesome. Why do you think community service is important in society, especially during the COVID-19 pandemic?
I think this would apply to any country, but I'm going to speak about the American experience specifically. From the beginning in this country, this place was founded on injustices and inequities. And with that being the starting point, and knowing that a certain group was benefiting from somebody else, it immediately set the tone that one group was going to be doing better than another. And as history has progressed, that gap has continued to widen, injustices have persisted, and we have made certainly steps in the right direction, but we have not reached the so-called promised land. So I see community service as a way of treating some of those injustices, as a way of, doing a little bit more than putting a Band-Aid on it, maybe a little ointment as well, But I'm careful not to say that it can cure it, because I truly believe that the cure is going to be found by changing the system. So until we can actually like change that system, then all we can do right now is like treat the symptoms of that system. So all that to say, I think that's what community service does, you know, whether it's providing after school tutoring for low income families who cannot afford to, you know, pay for private school or one-on-one tutoring, or helping out at a food pantry, or even knocking on doors and encouraging people to vote in areas that, you know, maybe candidates aren't spending their time like getting to know their constituents. I do believe that all of that is important for community service. COVID has, I mean, whatever Band-Aid we put on service, COVID just ripped it off. And we are certainly seeing the disparities exacerbated at such high levels right now with, you know, it's interesting that the unemployment rate can soar at the same time that Wall Street is like breaking records, or that certain industries can be decimated. You know, thinking about like the food industry, which tends to employ certain people of certain backgrounds, versus many of us with professional careers. We've kept our jobs and we're doing just fine. You know, many of us didn't even take a salary reduction. So anyway, the inequities in our society are deep, and community service is our way of at least doing something while we work to change the system.
That is awesome. Did you know anyone at Oxford College before you pursued employment there?
Weirdly enough, I did. You know, I know that this class is about social capital, and a few questions, I'm sure we'll talk more about how I benefited from that. But when I was an undergrad at Mississippi State, I was an RA on campus, and we had a buddy hall system. And so we would just share duty with the hall next to us. Well, anyway, one of those RAs from that buddy hall now works at Oxford, and started the year before I got there. And I didn't know that. And when I was going through the interview process, I ended up reaching out to him and, you know, asking him about his experience. But I actually got the job at Oxford because I utilized my network at LSU. So my supervisor at LSU, it's weird, my supervisor at LSU knew someone at Emory and was just like, I just know this person at Emory. I have no idea if they have a connection to the job you're applying for, but let's try. And it turns out that he was friends with the person who was hiring for my position. So because he put in a word for me, my now boss, Rhiannon, ended up reaching out to me and saying, hey, Ben Perlman reached out to me and said that you're somebody I should talk to. I would like to interview you. And I got the interview, and then I got the job. So
look at that.
I know.
Now that really truly resonates with the TED Talk that the students had to listen to, in terms of 85% of job opportunities can come through your network. It doesn't necessarily have to be someone you specifically know, but in your case, it was a supervisor who advocated for you. Yeah,
that's right. And I also watched that TED Talk, and I appreciate you sharing it with me. And it also reminded me of our graduate program. I don't know if you remember this, but we had Professor Archibald, who spent a good amount of time talking about what we needed to know to be good student affairs professionals, but also talked about building capital on campus, building capital in our jobs, and almost treating it like a savings account that one day we would cash in on. And I think that's what happened. You know, Bill, who recommended me, rarely gives out recommendations. And he was like, you've just done such a great job at LSU that I want to see you thrive. So I'm going to go out on a limb here. And it went far.
What influenced you to obtain your Juris Master's degree, and how do you plan on using it?
Yeah, there are quite a few factors that led me to getting a Juris Master's at Emory. The first was that I had left LSU with experience and not much more. You know, I had gotten the job working as residence life coordinator, but I hadn't really done much else while I was at LSU. And I told myself that at the next school that I go to, I'm going to take advantage of more than just getting a salary. So that was one thing. The second thing was I just happened to take a class. There was one semester where a class that I thought was interesting was being offered. And at a college, which many of you know this on this call, you can audit a class. You can just sit in on it, not get a grade. But me, I decided like, I'm going to get a grade for this class because I just want to see like how well could I do if I'm actually graded. So towards the end of the semester, I was doing really well. And the professor of the class pulled me to the side and was like, you should consider going to law school. And I was like, no, I shouldn't because it's very expensive. And we talked a little bit more about, how we could make it more affordable. So at that time, I'm like playing around with the idea, but while I'm in this program, or not in the program, in this class, I'm also learning more about my job doing community service. And I'm recognizing that so many of the problems that we're running into in the community are policy based. And if we could change the policy, we could change people's lives. And that really pushed me in the direction of wanting to get a degree where I could work in government, wanting to do something that I could do like policy analyst work, or at least work for a government agency. So all of these things are happening at the same time. I've got this professor, I've taken this class, I got an A in it. I'm seeing in the community that our little service, it's fine, but it's not really like fixing an issue. And then I learned that Emory has a program for people who don't necessarily want to be an attorney and be in the classroom, be in the courtroom, but they do want to have that legal foundation. And couple that with the fact that I work at Emory and the degree was going to be free, relatively free. Let me put an asterisk on that. Nothing in life is free, but at a steep discount. I ended up applying. The professor of that class wrote my letter of recommendation, and the rest is history. I got into the program and I'm graduating in May.
Yes. Did you always see yourself going down this career path? And if not, what was the original path?
No. I knew that I wanted to do community service, but I thought of it more as like a hobby. Like I would have my full-time job, but then I would like be involved in the community service organization or, volunteer on the weekends. And when I got to Mississippi State, I was a business major. And for 4 years, that's what I did. And it wasn't until my senior year in a capstone class that I realized that I don't want to do this for the rest of my life. And if you could learn anything from my story, please don't do that I did. Wait until your senior year to decide that like, this isn't what I want to do. So I was scrambling my final semester to try to get closer to things that I wanted to do. And I took the GRE on a whim. I got the job at Valdosta State because someone was just willing to take a chance on somebody like me who only had one semester of experience as an RA. And thankfully, that has led me now getting closer to what I am actually passionate about. But I will also say the same thing about, at the same time with my story, even though I would caution against waiting until your senior year to find out what you're truly passionate about, know that your degree does not dictate your life. And I have the business degree and it's great. And I have it on the wall in my office. But I've still been able to do the things that I want to do, even though my field is not related to business at all.
Awesome. So this might be a little bit redundant, but let's see. How has your background influenced your career choice? I think you already talked about how service intertwined with the policy aspect that's helping you with illegal. When you are done in May, do you think you're going to keep doing higher ed? Do you think you're ready to make that transition to more of a policy related job? Do you think you're going to look towards policy within higher ed? What are your thoughts at this particular moment?
Yeah. Well, and I'll add this to how I guess affirmed that community service was for me. In undergrad, I was also involved in community service on campus. And I realized that was the most salient thing that I did while I was in undergrad. Like being an RA was fine, free housing and a meal plan, and it was wonderful. But when I think about what was most impactful for me, it was my community service experience through this honors program that I was in. So I'll just add that as how influential undergrad can be. I'm open to what I do next. I think that government is probably the biggest player in making some of these systemic changes, but private businesses are not exempt from changing the course of where we are as a society. So I'm open to possibilities that exist outside of government. For example, Emory has an Office of Governmental Affairs. Their primary role is not only to advocate for Emory's interests on the city, state, and federal level, but also to make sure that Emory is a good steward of its resources to the community. So when we acquire new property in Atlanta, how are we using that to benefit the people that live around that property? Emory owns the largest healthcare system in the state. How are we engaging community members to see Emory healthcare as accessible? Because it's not. You know, if any of you on this call are from Atlanta, you know that like Grady is seen as the more accessible hospital system. And Emory seems to be, especially the hospital on the Atlanta campus, seems to be where wealthier people go. And we are trying to change that narrative because we see ourselves as just neighbors in Atlanta, and we want to just change how people interact with the institution. So I could see myself doing that. I mean, I'm starting the job search process and I'm casting a wide net. But I certainly want to do something that is at least got sort of a policy undertone, whether that's working at a private enterprise and working in corporate social responsibility, or working directly for some level of government. That's what I'm aiming to do.
Awesome. How has networking and social capital helped you in the current or your past endeavors?
I mentioned this to you prior to this conversation, but it's weird listening to that TED talk and being like, that was my story, you know, like that the 85% of people get their jobs because of people they knew. So I got the Valdosta job on a whim. That was thankful. It was a graduate assistant role, so low stakes there. But after Valdosta, I did not find a job immediately and was one of the last people in our cohort to get a job. And I actually got recommended for that job by Holly, who was in our program. So it was the first time, exactly, the year before us. So my very first professional job, I got it because she said this weird, she was like, I had a dream you worked with me. And I was like, girl, make it a reality. Like, talk to somebody and see if you can get me on. And I interviewed and got that job. And I already told the story about how my supervisor at LSU knew someone at Emory. So that's job number 2. Job number 3, I'm currently doing the same thing. I'm relying on my network. I have set up informational one-on-one meetings with the vice president of governmental affairs. I mentioned that as an office I want to work in. I just set up an interview with him just to talk about what he does and so he can learn my face. I have done that with a variety of stakeholders around campus and some people that are outside of campus, but also like involved in the Atlanta community. So I see the benefit of reaching into my network and just asking the question, you know, like, can you find time for us to chat about what it is that you do? And it has paid off big for me. In fact, it has gotten me both of my jobs.
So interesting, because the only reason how I'm able to teach right now is because the original coordinator for the AFAM department was my stepmom's line sister. So through me talking to my stepmom, telling her I'm interested in doing XYZ, she was like, oh, you know, my line sister is over that department, slid her my resume, slid her my ideas, and now I'm teaching for what is my 3rd or 4th semester.
Yeah.
And then it's also, also when it comes down to my first job, I put air quotes around it, my first job at the University of Albany, because it was not actually the first, but it's the first one I claim. But when I got that job, I did not know I was being interviewed by somebody in my sorority and one of my fraternity brothers. But having that connection, even though I didn't know who they were, they knew who I was because I have my sorority on my resume. They already knew, one, we're going to interview her a bit harder than we interview other people just to make sure she's like-minded like us. Okay, cool. Check that box. Two, when offered the job, they held me down. They knew I wouldn't get a paycheck for the first 30 days, but I never had to worry about a meal. I never had to worry about anything. They took me under their wings and made sure I was okay until I got my paycheck. And that is the beauty of social networking, because Black capital, social capital, networking, the whole nine, because anybody else who got hired at the same time as me, that they didn't get that treatment. Nobody was making sure they was well fed. Nobody was making sure they knew the ropes and stuff like that. But it's purely, I utilize my network. I utilize the information that I had access to, and boom. I will say my sorority has allowed me to have some privileges that most people don't in terms of job searching, because once someone sees that, no matter if they are in my organization or not, they help. Like right now, I am in Tennessee and I'm trying to get this promotion. One VP is an alpha, another VP is a kappa. And when I tell you they sitting at that table talking about what I'm doing and they're not even my direct supervisors, I am confident that by the time July 1 roll around, my money gonna be what I want it to be, because I have people advocating for me. I'm bringing my skills to the table, but that network that they're pouring into me and I'm pouring into them. So please believe.
You know what's interesting about the word network is that I actually used to hate when people said it, because I felt like it was like a cop-out, like, oh, you need to do more networking. And when I heard the word, I always just imagined like standing in a room being fake. And I'm already an introvert. So just imagining like going to a conference or going to a mixer or an alumni event and trying to like schmooze with people, I was just dreading it. Like, I'm never going to get a job. And as I've gotten older, I just realized that that's just one type of networking. I go to none of that now. And I network on my own terms by utilizing, the alumni base, finding people on LinkedIn, sending them messages, sending people direct emails, or following up with somebody after a meeting. I've found that those things just work better for like me. And that's still networking. I'm still making myself known, talking about what it is that I want to do and learning more about them so that we can at least build the foundation to a relationship. And I hate that I didn't learn that until I was much older, because when I was an undergrad, I thought of it as like a competitive thing, where I needed to be the most talked about person in the room. That's just simply not the case.
Pre-COVID, what events were you used to? Pre-COVID, I'm going to ask you like this. What was your best community service event that you've done at your job? Your favorite?
Oh gosh. That I promise you that would change no matter the month. Like we could have this follow-up conversation. I'm gonna pick another one. My job allows me to oversee 3 major areas of community service. There's the Emory Reads program where we do after-school tutoring for public school kids. There's the Oxford Service Corps program where those students are matched with a community partner, and they work with that community partner for a full year. And then there's Volunteer Oxford, and they plan like large scale community service events and an alternative breaks. Immediately, I think what comes to mind are the alternative breaks, because they're so unique. And for anybody on the call, if you are even thinking about doing something different with your fall or spring break, I highly encourage it. Alternative break is basically you taking your fall or spring break and deciding to do community service in a different place, or it could be where you are. And we've traveled all over. We've gone to New Orleans and done like hurricane relief. Last year, we went to North Carolina and worked at a tiger sanctuary where they had a bunch of big cats. we also went to DC and we advocated on Capitol Hill for education policy. And and we've gone to Kentucky and worked with the coal mining community. So alternative breaks, I think, largely are my favorite because they are so different. You know, I'm out of the office, I'm in the community, I'm meeting people, and I feel like I am just doing something that makes a difference. And because we aren't able to have them this year due to COVID, I think that I'm just missing them so much that they immediately come to mind. It's like my favorite like community service project. So it was interesting because you might remember this. We were in DC on a trip last year when like COVID became a thing, and we scrambled to we had the trip in North Carolina with the Tigers and Lions, and then us in DC, and Emory was like, everybody needs to get back ASAP. So that was, we'll never forget that trip. But yeah, that was the most impactful one.
Okay. Do any students have any additional questions they'd like to ask Mr. Horne? Feel free to unmute yourself. Going once, going twice. Ricardo, do you have any final words of wisdom you'd like to share with the class?
You know, I was thinking about the TED Talk that I watched and just reflecting back on like when I was in the shoes of your students and things that I wish I would have done differently. I realized that I did not engage the Career Center at all during undergrad. I couldn't have told you as an undergraduate student what the Career Center did or how they could have helped me. I would have done that differently. I already mentioned that maybe I would have done some self-exploration and found out that business isn't what, you know, I wanted to do. But I also think about the professors who I didn't get to know while I was there, and how they have entire networks themselves. You know, so many of them have experience that are outside of the classroom that there's no telling like who they can, you know, connect you with. My business professors, for example, many of them were professionals before they came back into the classroom. And, you know, I never took the opportunity to get to know them so that I could utilize their network or tell them what I'm trying to do. And then they could tell me how they can help me, you know, get there. And I would just say that I've learned that, and you probably can tell by this conversation, that people like to talk about themselves. So it's easy to send an email to someone and say, hey, I just want to learn more about what you do. Like they jump at the chance. And I think that a lot of people, especially minorities, especially I found being a Black man, we're eager to help each other succeed. So I'm always met with, you know, grace and just as I mentioned, eagerness for them to like pull me in and almost serve as like mentors. And, you know, in the past few months that I've decided to start job searching, people that I've set up one-time conversations with have done incredible things for me, like send me jobs, recommend me for jobs, or even gotten me in touch with congressmen, you know, that are serving in our Congress right now to have a conversation about, you know, how I might be able to join their staff in the future. And all that started with a simple email just saying, hey, I'm interested in your work. I'd love to know more about what you're doing. So it might sound like intuitive. It might even sound like I knew this already. You know, I did this in high school. But I truly believe that we don't recognize the true power of our capital and the importance of building a strong base and foundation so that when you really need it, it'll be there for you to cash out on.
Awesome. I would like to share a few experiences with the students, being that I attended VSU as an undergrad. One, I made sure I took advantage of internships, particularly summer internships, but I did do a few during the semester. Those internships were opportunities for me to get letters of recommendation from people. I was not a strong student academically in undergrad. By my senior year, I was screaming C's get degrees, and here I am teaching y'all. So that was just my reality, that, you know, I was extraordinarily leader, but academically, I struggled a bit. And that's because my social life exceeded my academic life sometimes. And so doing those internships allowed me to meet new people, try experiences. So similar to Ricardo, I started off as a business major, but I had a class or two that I just was struggling with. I went to career services and they told me every job that I would have been interested in with a marketing degree, I could get with a public relations degree. And so the career services at VSU is what helped me change my major early. So I only ended up staying in school an extra semester as opposed to like an extra year. I did not tough it out and try to just, I'm gonna do this business degree. That wasn't for me. So I was able to make that pivot to communications by, I pretty much lived in the career services office. And from that experience, I began my side hustle of doing people's resume, because I learned so much of having to adjust my resume, what skills people needed to know about me, all of those things, that spending that amount of time in career services helped me make a whole side hustle. And it's something that I still do today. A lot of people's resumes, job searches, things of that nature. And then being a student leader, I don't know how many of y'all know Miss Rebecca Taylor over in the Office of Testing. She was my student advisor for Black Student League, and I was in Blazer Pride, and she really helped guide me. There were a couple of organizations on campus that I thought I was interested in, and she told me that's not the route you want to go. And just utilizing her as a mentor helped me navigate my academic and my social life at BSU. And then, of course, she's always one of the people that at the beginning of my career search, I would always list as a recommendation, because she knew me outside of the classroom and could speak on my leadership skills and could speak on just who I was as an individual when it came to things that, an employer may want to know. How do I work in a team? What are my leadership skills? What are my thought processing skills? Things of that nature. So to Ricardo's point of like utilizing your professors and just all of the resources around you, there are so many opportunities to slowly begin networking while you're in school, but truly like evaluating and assessing, what's available and who may have options and opportunities that you are unaware of. But always making sure you leave a good impression on people, because people are, they will recommend you, and some people will be like, nah, you don't want no recommendation from me. I ain't gonna have nothing good to say about you. So be wise and mindful, but just like the TED Talk say, 85% of people get their jobs through networking. And if you guys are not at a point where you have began networking, you're not too late. But it's essential. You never know what doors might open up for you simply by talking to somebody, like you said, letting them know who you are, letting them know you're interested in what they're doing. And Miss Rebecca is actually the reason I work in higher ed. So I had so much fun as a student. I was like, I wonder what it takes to work at a college. Miss Rebecca worked at a college. So like, what does it take? And so I would have conversations with her. And then I started doing research of like, well, what can I do working at a college? One thing I want all of y'all to know, especially if you're interested in going to graduate school when you're done with undergrad, if you get a job at a college, much like how Emory is helping pay for Ricardo to get this degree, if you get a job at a college, especially in the state of Georgia, after working there for at least 6 months, you are now eligible for tuition assistance, and you can take classes for free or at a very discounted price. I don't believe Miss Rebecca paid for any of the 3 degrees she has. Associates, bachelor's, master's. She's been working at VSU that long that she has been able to get all of her degrees and slowly moved up. Now she's the director of testing. And also similar to Ricardo, with me working at the University of Tennessee, I just applied for a PhD program because as an employee and a resident of Tennessee, I could actually get my PhD for free. Do I want to get another degree? Not really, but might as well try to take advantage of the resources that are available to me while they're available, So look at stuff in the grand scheme of things. Right now, for those of you guys who are graduating seniors, you are not sure what the job market looks like in your industry. You just don't know what you want to do. if graduate school is going to be an option for some of you guys, I say try to get a job at the campus, even if it's an administrative assistant position, a coordinator role, whatever it can be, something that you will be willing to do for 2 years, 3 years, and get it for free. Or of course, graduate assistantships are available. So if you're able to get a GA position that also pays for school and gives you a stipend. So I don't know where you are in your life. I don't know where you are in terms of navigating your career, but I wish I had known that if I took a job at VSU, I wouldn't have student loan debt in terms of graduate student loan debt. While I was at VSU, I had a number of scholarships. I had a football scholarship and I never set foot on that football field, but it's because my network allowed me to take like a temporary administrative assistant role and I got a scholarship for it. I had a women's basketball scholarship. Only time I stood on that court was during practice to play defense for somebody. But I was the women's basketball manager and got a scholarship that provided me free housing in Centennial with a meal plan, and I traveled with the team. Please always know that there are so many options available while you're in school, but then whatever doors can open up afterwards. So we have allowed Mr. Horne to utilize his knowledge and his information as Black Social Capital. I am here giving some jewels. Take notes. This conversation is being recorded, so I will put it on BlazeView for everybody to listen to, replay, all of that. But Ricardo, thank you so much.
Yes.
Your content has been phenomenal.
I just want to also say that this whole conversation has been about social capital, and I hope that you'll think of me as someone that's a part of your network now. So if you are considering, like my journey looks something like his, or we have this thing in common, or I want to talk about blank, I'm happy for Professor Bass to share my email address so that we can reach out and maybe even have one-on-one conversations if there was something that maybe you just didn't feel like asking now, or you might want to, follow up on. I don't want you to do what Lauren and I did, which is we figured things out on our own. And now we're looking back, trying to figure out how do we stop someone else from making the mistakes that we made. So there are no stupid questions. I think that my pride got in the way sometimes and prevented me from asking things. And then other things I just didn't know exist, so I couldn't ask about them. But please know that you've got at least 2 people on this call right now who are rooting for you, and you can certainly reach out to us if we can be of assistance.
Finally, class, I just want to let you guys know I added some resources to the BlazeView. So you can look on the discussion board and see that I listed 2 things as resources. And as time goes on through the semester, I will add more. One of them is an episode of Earn Your Leisure. It's a podcast that's on a regular podcast platform, but also on YouTube. The particular episode I linked is a lady talking about student loans. So if you have them right now, if somebody in your family has student loans, she is dropping major information. I do have a PowerPoint presentation that contains some of the information she's discussing. So if you're like, how am I going to pay these student loans when I get out of school? You can email me and I can send you that presentation, but please listen to that in your spare time. And then another one, there is actually a podcast called Black Social Capital. And with that podcast, it is 2 people who work in higher education, and they do interviews of different people from different fields because they too are really trying to expound on what Black social capital is. So again, it's in the discussion board called resources. I will add more links under that discussion board as time goes on and I learn about more information that could be valuable to you guys. All right, Mr. Horne, thank you so much. I'm going to end this recording.